Hi, thanks for tuning in for another dose of bite-sized bits of knowledge where we give you meaningful information in a short amount of time. Today we're talking about a concept called capital calls. You'll find these mentioned in operating agreements, shareholders agreements, limited partnership agreements, or in other words, documents that are signed and govern the rights of owners. So a capital call means that management needs more money for whatever reason they've deemed necessary, and they have issued this notice to the shareholders that says you have to put in more money, usually pro rata based on the number of shares that you have, and that's what's going to happen. However, sometimes people go into these opportunities or deals where they are putting in some money or some other contribution, and that's the extent that they think that they're contributing. They're surprised to hear that they have to put in more money because they probably didn't read the agreement or have it reviewed by counsel. And so all of a sudden they get this capital call and they don't want to do it. So let's talk about what happens if you do it and what happens if you don't do it. If you do it, you contribute more money and your capital account, your tax capital account, gets adjusted accordingly. It goes up. If you don't do it, then, well, a lot of things can happen. I've seen agreements where if you don't contribute your pro rata portion of the capital call, then you lose your shares. I think that's a bit punitive and unfair. Suppose someone just can't financially cover it. That's a bit unreasonable in our view. Another option we've seen is that your equity could be adjusted proportionately to how much you did not come up with, because presumably somebody else has to come up with it. Now, if the other partners come up with it or they get a loan, that's to be determined. But the idea there is that your equity would be, diluted a bit. Another alternative is that, the money can be covered by someone else, or whether it's a loan, and that money plus the cost of that money can be paid out to the other partners using your distributions that you'd get, if it's a partnership, that is, until that money is paid back, plus the costs of that money. And then everything would result to normal. The point of all this, though, is that number one, you got to be aware of it, and number two, you got to understand what happens if you can't contribute or you can't, participate in a capital call. Okay, so there's a lot of agreements where that's not in there, and it's not in there usually because someone didn't want it in there. You need to just be aware of what's in your agreements. This is an example of a provision that can hurt you. So I hope you found this helpful, and thank you for stopping by, and stay tuned for more.